Hi folks, this is Phil and you're tuned in to Philip Dizon Podcast. Today, we're going to kickstart our first episode with the current Chancellor Elect of the College of Fellows by United Architect of the Philippines, who is reshaping cities and spaces. Get ready for an inspiring ride with Architect James Jao. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, James, for coming over. I know the weather has been a little bit difficult for most. It's been stormy and rainy for the past few weeks at that. No, it hasn't really stopped. And you just came from Cebu, you were telling me.
Yeah, I flew in yesterday. Of course, for several meetings and events. And then, of course, to be here in your podcast.
Thank you so much for doing us the honor of being here with us today. Can you tell me a bit of recently, what have you been really busy with?
Oh, okay. I just came back a few weeks ago from Copenhagen because...
Wow, in Denmark.
Yes, Denmark. We attended the UIA, Union of International Architects World Congress, that was held on July 3 to 6.
In our last conversation, you've been telling me that you've attended quite a number of World Congress at that.
Oh yes, indeed. Since 1993, I've been attending the UIA conference, starting in Chicago, then followed by the World Congress in Barcelona, Spain, and then in Berlin, Germany, and then thereafter I missed a few of them, and I did Tokyo, and then now, of course, after the pandemic, it's the first time that we all gathered again, all the architects from all over the world.
Really?
We were in Copenhagen.
And how many of you in this gathering normally?
There were like more than 1,000 delegates during that World Congress. And then, and the Philippine delegations came in strong with more than 20 delegations.
Okay.
So we were quite a number in that Congress. So together with our national president, Richard Garcia, and our past presidents from the UAP, because with Yolanda Reyes, who ran for the presidency.
But how are you chosen to be a delegate for the Philippines?
Well, it's actually the World Congress is open to all architects.
Okay.
So you can register. But we, as part of the National Board and the Executive Committee, because I am now the current Chancellor of the College of Fellows, so on my personal capacity, I went there as a delegate of UAP.
Can you then, please, since you've been attending a lot of this World Congress, and not everybody's privileged to attend, though it's open like what you're saying, what are some of the learnings and knowledge that you've gathered in this recent Congress that you've attended?
Oh yeah, I would say it's great to be in that World Congress because you get to hear the iconic, the best architects in the world speaking and presenting their projects and their papers, and also the sharing and learning from the different institutions of architecture throughout the world. And then, yes, as an architect, it's a must for you to be there to experience, because that's how you feel how strong architecture can be and how strong architecture can influence the world.
Why? What exactly happens in the Congress, and how long does it normally last for?
Well, this Congress, as I've said, is from July 3 to 6.
Okay.
But of course, there's always the plenary sessions where you get to hear the keynote speakers, and then there are several seminars on a particular topic, and then you can choose whichever topic you can sit in. And in fact, the Philippines presented a paper on government policies, and then our past president Yolanda Reyes was one of the moderator for a very interesting topic, full house, full packed, Women at War, which is very touching seminar. And that's how you also feel how architects can help mitigate, especially those who are more vulnerable in terms of war and conflict, the women and children.
Yes.
So beyond the physical, there's also the social. Because we are as architects and planners, we go beyond the walls of architecture, but we should look into the community and eventually, of course, the world. Because, in fact, the theme of the World Congress in Copenhagen is like leaving no one behind.
Interesting.
Inclusivity. So that's very important.
So with all of the topics that you guys were discussing over there, what made the most impact for you in this last Congress?
The last keynote speaker.
Okay.
It was talking about, and I personally, because recently we've been bombarded with this AI thing.
Right.
From ChatGPT to all this technology of artificial intelligence, like somebody else can create something for us or design something for us, but the speaker was saying that we must be in touch with nature.
Okay.
So as an architect, we must be deeply rooted with nature, just like how the trees, the roots communicate each other underneath the earth. We, as an architect, must feel the earth, because sometimes the message with all this global warming happening, sometimes you don't see it on your screen, but you can feel it underneath your feet.
So that's to maintain the harmony between the habitats and nature.
And the built environment.
And the built environment.
Yes, that's very important.
So I think that falls under organic architecture.
Yes, it's part of it, but it's a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
Between the built and the natural. And we are responsible as an architects because we are the forebearers of the built environment. We make things happen, the development that's happening on the earth. So we are responsible, and we should always look for the sustainable development, which is the target that should happen in 2030, which is very soon. And during that Congress, we were assessing how are we doing in terms of coping up with the 2030 declaration made in Paris years ago. And I think the ultimate assessment is that we're far behind for making it happen. So we have to do more than what we're doing now. And that can only happen, of course, not only with the physical, but should be coupled with the policy making of the government.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Especially for a country like ours, where we are so much affected by the climate change.
Yeah.
And the rising of the sea levels in our coastal areas. And I know you guys talk about, if you can walk us through what exactly this environmental, green, and sustainable architecture can do for the community and the country as a whole.
Oh yes, that's a very broad topic. But then, sustainability now is already a byword in everybody's language. So most of the people are aware of sustainability. In fact, it's been greenwashed most often in other forum. But then, yes, I think individually we should start with that every person must look forward to contributing to the sustainability of our Mother Earth, since we only have one planet and we cannot source our energy from another planet. So we must take responsibility for every action that we do, that we mitigate contributing to the heating up of the atmosphere. And every decisions that we make should be more on a sustainable development and considering less carbon footprint that we put on in the atmosphere.
And how are we right now? What's the state of the status of the Philippine architects here? How are we going trending towards that objective?
Yeah, I think Philippine architecture, I can say, is blossoming.
Okay.
Because recently we have been joining a lot of architectural firms, have been joining the World Architecture Festival, and they've been shortlisted in the finalists of different categories. And there were a few who won in a specific category. I think we're faring in terms of architectural designs and competitions, but we need to do more. We need to encourage more people and more architects to be globally sensitive. That's what we're looking into now. Is like the global architecture. The Filipinos should enter that kind of arena, and I think it can happen with the influence also of the Western architecture that's happening. We need the technology from them, so it's a collaborative effort that we can work on.
Yes, and how is our government now adopting to this need that we have to support the architects in urban planning and what have you?
I think there's a good news because with the bill passed by Congressman Toff de Venecia, he already saw the importance of the architects in the built environment, particularly in the local government, the LGUs. Okay. So we're looking into a more mature participation of the architects within the planning of every locality, every municipality, the city, and of course, eventually, they should hear us on a national level.
What was the most significant topic that made an impression on your part, and can you discuss that?
Oh yes. It's a very significant question indeed, and it says, as an architect, how can you change the world?
Okay.
And when I heard that, oh, that's a Miss Universe question. And I was glad to answer it from my heart. Of course, I can speak right there in front of the delegation. But then, yes, that it hits me in a way. Yeah, as an individual architect, we must all participate and, of course, help mitigate the climate change that is happening now in the world. And it's real. As we can see what just happened recently here in Manila, the constant rain and the flood that's happening, it is happening. And the extreme heat wave that's happening in Europe now, and all the fire in the forest that's happening, these are all due to the climate change that's happening. So we must be responsible. When we build something, we must make sure that it's for the betterment of humanity. Because at the end of the day, yes, we have this iconic architecture, we have these magnanimous projects, but at the end of the day, we are designing for humanity and for the future generation. So that should answer like, is this the best thing that we can give to the future? Or are we just creating it for our client, for the profit of their development? Or are we saving more for the future of humanity?
So when it comes to, I'm sure you're coming up with quite a number of projects. Do you have any archetype or prototype that you intend to execute these plans of yours to be able to fulfill such a vision?
Yes, and I'm proud to say, like, since I launched the Eco House in 2008, I've done enough, more than enough, but still not enough throughout these years. The climate resilient, the disaster resilient housing models that I have created. And I have built it and I've proven that it can withstand 9 magnitude earthquake and 300 kilometers per hour typhoon or hurricane.
You told me one time in our past conversation that perhaps one of the influence that you had was the Kalinga housing up north. Can you discuss that a little bit more?
Yeah, indeed. So right after Yolanda in 2013, my good friend James Ong, who was the editor then of Ecoconuts Manila, called in to say, can you write an article about a housing that can withstand Typhoon Yolanda? So immediately, I delved into that because I had a very upfront experience, because the house that I designed for the vice mayor of Tacloban, Jerry Yao Kasin, was really devastated by the typhoon. So a month after Yolanda, I went back to Tacloban, not only to visit the house of the project that I did for Vice Mayor Jerry, but also to learn, to understand the situation of what happened during the typhoon and what caused the destruction in terms of structure, in terms of development. So going into ground zero of the disaster, you will learn a lot. You will see how and why some structure withstood and why some structure immediately collapsed. So as an architect, I have to learn from there. And then moving on, I have to look and research what can withstand such a horrible, terrible catastrophe. And one model house that I looked into is the Kalinga house up north of the Philippines. And that was my inspiration in creating now what I call the disaster resilient model house, which is the diamond house, shaped like the Kalinga house, and the star rise, which is influenced by the Bahay Kubo and the Bahay de Bato.
Interesting. So James, can you share with our viewers who is James Jao?
Okay, James Jao, of course, is a man with colorful OOTD, and I'm known with that. So every time I do on a public occasion, they look forward for my outfit of the day with my matching shoes and shirt and belt. Anyway, James Jao is an architect who was born in Manila, but now residing in Cebu. So, you know, I'm an adopted citizen already of Cebu. And of course, having been raised in Manila, I was already aware of the urban life because we were living in Santa Mesa, overlooking Ramon Magsaysay Boulevard. So that's how I encountered the urban life and the city life way back then in my childhood. But then, in high school days, we moved to Sorsogon in Bicol because my mom inherited that house, so we have to live and maintain that house. So then, I spent about the latter part of my elementary education and my high school in Irusin, Sorsogon, and that's how I was immersed with nature. It was a completely different setting, having grown in Manila, then suddenly you're in the rural area of Sorsogon.
Is that one of the inspirations of pursuing your career?
That was one of the influence in me because that's how I learned to be in touch with nature. Because part of our curriculum then is like practical arts, which is we plant vegetables, we do gardening. So that has a big influence in how I envision architecture since then. But the greatest influence, of course, was my father, who was actually encouraging me already to take up architecture since I was a child.
I also know that you have a privilege, you had the privilege in getting to the best universities to learn the craft of architecture. Can you tell us more about that?
For my college education, I completed my Bachelor of Science in Architecture from the University of Santo Tomas. Of course. So I was back in Manila after Bicol. And then, by the time I graduated, I earned the highest grade for the final presentation of my thesis in UST at the time, with a flat 1 grade in thesis. So
Interesting.
I never had a flat 1 in the entire college days, but I only got the flat 1 in thesis. So
Okay.
that was a big break, and a big I was in gratitude for the university for having, taught me to pursue excellence in terms of academic education in architecture.
And also abroad, I know that you studied.
Yes, so after high school, Bicol, college days, Manila, immediately after, I was sent by my grandfather to Cebu. So I started my career doing on-site project immediately with a guest house, a 1-bedroom guest house. So that's where I established my practice in Cebu City. And years after, I realized that I need to pursue more than what I'm doing. Although I was already doing good because I'm getting projects all over the island of Cebu, but then I realized I need to learn more. So I applied postgraduate education, and then I was accepted at the London School of Economics and Political Science. So I entered LSE in 2004 and finished the course in 2005, Master of Science in City Design and Social Science. I was the first Filipino to have been accepted and completed the course.
Really?
And it was a big influence in my career from then on until now. But before I even entered and pursued that postgraduate education, people were telling me, why do you need to go to London when you're doing well already in your practice in Cebu, etc., etc. So it was a decision that I had to make. Either I should buy a new car, build a new house, or pursue a higher education. So with the enlightened prayers from the Monastery of Transfiguration in Bukidnon, then I decided I will pursue higher education in London.
Sorry.
Philip, what I did, I closed my practice for a year in 2004, packed my bags and flew to London, not to visit the Queen, but to pursue higher education. And now I can say it was worth every cent that I spent and invested in that education.
And I suppose it's also that background, that's why you're able to succeed in your career.
Yes, because my final presentation there was our proposal, because my teammate was a social scientist from South Africa and an architect from India. So we are a team. So we presented the sustainable development of Haringey. Haringey is one of the 10 poorest borough or municipality in London City. And so we got an excellent review for that kind of presentation. And that hinged me later on to my pursuit of the eco houses, which we launched in 2008.
So what would your advice be to continue education? Well, at this point in your career, are you still going to continue educating yourself?
I would love to pursue my PhD soon, but I need time because in London, PhD is a 4-year course.
Okay, wow.
Because you really have to delve into the research program, and you are supervised by a professor. So that's a different program compared to what they're offering in the Philippines. So maybe age is not a question. I think it's more of time. Because the time I was pursuing my postgraduate in LSE, I was the most mature at the age of 38. The youngest was 23 from the USA. So I would suggest now, especially to the young aspiring architects, to pursue higher education, because the learning is beyond what we learn from the University of Architecture here in the Philippines. You need to pursue more, because the understanding, especially beyond the architecture, is the city and the urban. So we have to learn from there.
I totally agree with continuous education.
Yeah.
It's the only way to go. Yes, certainly.
Yeah, and then one of the most interesting course that I did there was economics.
Okay.
Having no background with economics, one of our subjects is economics of London and New York. So practically I need to study how the economies of New York and London grew throughout the period.
I remember in one of our conversations in the past, you told me that ecological is not exactly economical. Can you expound on that?
Yeah, because when I launched in 2008, the Eco House, the first impression of the Filipinos is like, ano yun? What's that? So I have to explain them, like, the Eco House is built in a manner using materials that are good for the environment and with less carbon footprint. But people have the impression that when you say eco and it's pronounced eco, it's from the word ecology, not from the word economics. So, people always think that eco means mura, cheaper, less expensive. No, it's not. So it's ecologically sustainable.
Interesting.